Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's presentation on online research for medical transcription, or filling in the blanks. We have a lot to get through today, so bear with me and we'll try to plug through all of these websites as best we can today. So I'm going to start with probably what would be the most common search that I do when I'm filling in reports, and that's called the wildcard search. So I'm going to just quickly go over how I go about doing a report. I know we talk about the 3-pass method in the course. I kind of do a bit of a variation on that. If I start the recording and I find that it's pretty decent and I can understand what they're saying, then I'm just going to start typing. If it's somebody that I find to be a little bit more difficult to understand, then I'm going to listen to it for a little bit. Don't let the first 5 to 10 seconds panic you if they say that quickly. A lot of dictators say the same thing when they introduce a report. So they tend to be repetitive and they tend to say the first part really quickly. So if you find that with the report, don't let it panic you, get you anxious before you even get going. But if you listen to it for a little bit, that'll help you start to get used to their voice. But basically what I do is once I start typing, if I listen to the same spot 3 times and I can't catch it, I will leave a blank and I will just keep going. And I will go through the entire report, but before I even try to fill in a blank. So I don't do a paragraph and try to fill in the blanks because I might not know what the full report's about yet. And what I find is if you can get through the whole thing first, there's a few benefits to it. One is you know what it's about now. So for instance, if it's about a hip surgery, it's like being given a hint when you go back to fill in blanks, like, oh, okay, they're talking about hip anatomy, so this must be labrum, for example. It's like playing a game and being given a clue. You're getting used to the voice, you're getting used to whatever sound quality issues there are, be it people in the background, that scratchy sound you hear because they're usually recorded over the phone. They have an accent that you're maybe not as familiar with, or they mumble. You sort of get used to those things as you go through. And then also they tend to repeat things later on in the report that they mumbled first, but then they say it clear as a bell. So those are all reasons that I go through the whole report with as many blanks as there has to be before I go back. And then when I go back, I fill in the blanks that I can now get easily enough without much effort, like, oh, how did I miss that? Or, oh, you said this later really clearly. And then I leave the what I call the hard blanks, the toughies, I'll leave them for the last. And usually the first thing I do to fill in those blanks is a wildcard search. So a wildcard search is basically when you can hear part of a term or a phrase, but not the entire thing. So this guy that I thought was adorable, he says, I can only hear part of what the doctor is saying. How might I figure this out? So this is the first step that I normally do, and this is a very common one for me. So I usually do what's called a wildcard search. So for instance, let's say you could tell that it ends in catheter, and you could tell it started with a P sound, and you caught a T, and you caught an L. Certain letters really stand out of the garbled dictations. So let's just use that as an example. And then we'll also use, you heard it started with an A, then there was some sound there, and then sklur, and it ends in is, and that's all you caught. And I know these are the examples. Some of you have heard me say these on the phone, so I'm sorry if I'm a broken record, but these examples work very well, and I'll show you why that is. But basically, most websites, and I'll get to these in just a minute, but when you plug in the information you know, usually you use a placeholder of some sort instead of these blanks. So most websites want you to use an asterisk to hold the place of one letter or infinite letters. It doesn't really matter for most websites. And then some of them don't accept the asterisk. There's some we're going to get into near the end of today, and they prefer you to use the percent sign. So if you try one, it doesn't work, try the other one. It's usually one or the other. So let's give this a shot. Oh yes, be aware of letters that sound the same way. So if you try to do a search and you've heard an F sound and you put in the letter F and the results that you're looking for don't come back the way you hoped, then try PH instead because it makes the same sound. A K and a hard C make the same sound, or an S and a soft C make the same sound. So just be aware of that when you're trying things. If one doesn't work, try another one. Okay, so here's 3 very popular sites. Sandra's asking me if sulfate with an F and sulfate with a PH, if there's a difference. What I would recommend you do is go to the Stedman's Online Dictionary, research one, see what the definition is, research the other one, see what the definition is. And in fact, we're going to get to sound-alike words later on, so that's a perfect question. But basically, we're going to start with mtdictionary.com. That is my favorite site. It basically is a lot of medical terms, phrases, and surgical tools. It doesn't have English words. It's all medical. If I can't find something there, I go to onelook.com. It has medical terms. It does not have as many as the first site. It has no surgical tools. I can't think of ever having seen any on there. And it has English words. Sometimes you think you're hearing a medical term and you try it in one look and an English word pops up and you just, swat yourself in the forehead because it never entered your mind. And on occasion, onelook.com's had something MT Dictionary didn't, even though MT Dictionary has a lot more medical terms. So it's usually my second go-to. And then drugs.com is for medications. So let's see if I can get us out of this screen for a second. Okay. So here's mtdictionary.com. It gives you instructions right on the page, which is lovely. So let's start with that one example with scler in the middle. So this site will spread out what you're hearing among 3 boxes, but don't let that intimidate you. So basically, let's just say I could tell it started with the ah sound. If you did not catch the first letter, don't worry about it. Don't put anything in. And let's say we could tell it had scler in the middle, and we could tell it ended with is. So all I've done is spread it out amongst the boxes. If there was something there I didn't catch, I don't have to have something in every box. So just keep that in mind. Then I'm going to hit search. And it comes up with results, 20 a page. Now, sometimes you'll come up with several pages and you'll be like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to do this? But usually what I find is you can usually tell if that first syllable matches what they're saying or not, even though it's kind of garbled. Usually you can go, oh, it doesn't sound like ack or al or am, and like really quickly go through a page. But I'm going to just go to a second page and I'm going to just close the comment screen for a minute just so I can see, because the one page I wanted that I forgot is Stedman's. Oh, and of course it signed me out. So let's remember me next time. Okay, so basically when I'm working, I have wildcard search sites open, or my favorite sites, and then I have some sort of resource open that I can use to verify my result. So I want to double check what it means to make sure it makes sense in the sentence. So what I want to use this as an example is, let's just say I'm going through here and I'm like, arthrosclerosis, that's what he's saying. So what I normally do is I use my mouse, I hold down the left mouse button and I scroll across very carefully and highlight it. And then I hit Control C to copy it. So I've got the spelling. Then I go into Stedman's, paste, got the spelling, look it up. Arthrosclerosis, stiffness of the joint, especially in the aged. So if this is a senior citizen with sore knees, that would be perfect. But let's just say this happened to be a cardiology report and they're talking about someone with plaques in the arteries. You would not have arthrosclerosis in your arteries. That makes no sense because there's no joints in your arteries. So, okay, that's not right. I'm just going to go back a couple down. Atherosclerosis. Arthrosclerosis and atherosclerosis sound a lot alike. So I'm going to hit Control C. I'm going to come back here and paste it in with Control V. And then search. It's going to make me take a little extra step for a second. That's okay. Okay, lipid deposits in the intima of large and medium-sized arteries, which is the same thing as plaques in the arteries. So bingo, there we go. So you can do your little happy dance and you've got the spelling now and you're ready to roll. I will say with any of the Stedman's resources, the ebooks or Stedman's Online, you need to have the correct spelling. So if you're ever unsure of spelling, this is a good way to figure out how to spell something. You can put in the parts that you know, and it will come back with the right spelling. So an embarrassing example, some of you have heard me admit this, but I've been in health, 20 years or so. I can never remember how to spell acetaminophen. So all these crazy vowels. So I know it starts with ACE. I know there's an M, and then a little bit later there's an N. So I'm going to use that asterisk to hold the place, whatever vowels in between, because I'm not sure about it. Then I know a little later there's a PH. I know it ends in an N. That's all I can remember. So then I hit search. There's the spelling for me. So that's one thing you can use it for. Beat a drug. It doesn't have a lot of drugs in here. It has some, but any words like that. And then let's just say that they said something like temporal parietal, and you're like, is that temporal parietal, 2 words? Or is that temporo parietal? So you can just go temp, and you can go parietal, and search. Because remember, the spelling will change at a certain point if it's 1 word or 2. So this shows me it can be 1 word. So that's very handy as well. So I use this for little things that you might not necessarily think of, other than just trying to figure out what the doctor is saying. So the other example I wanted to use was a tool. So a lot of times you're going to hear them go, we inserted a blobbity-bloop catheter. And you're like, what kind of catheter? So you just put catheter in the N box. Don't hit space bar. I could tell it started with a P, and then I heard a T, and I heard an L. That's the other example we had on the slide. Hit search, and it'll bring back all the catheters it has in its database that start with a P and have a T and an L. So you can work your way through and see if you can find it. So then, I can't find something on this page, then I'm going to go to onelook.com next. So I have to remember they don't have tools here, but they do have other things. So if we were to do the atherosclerosis thing again, I think this one is asterisk for the site. This is just squished into one box. So it does bring back some suggestions, but I'm just going to hit definitions in order to, that's kind of its search. And here's the results. So the thing that's different about this site is you can then click on that and it will lead you to different dictionaries. Now remember though, you have to follow the hierarchy for CanScribe. So just remember Book of Style. First it's the course material, then Book of Style, then Stedman's, and then other online things. So if what Stedman's has as a definition is any different than this, Stedman's wins. So just keep that in mind, but it's a way to look up different definitions of things. So that's the other thing with this site. But you can also just highlight it, hit Control-C, go into Stedman's, hit Control-V, and look it up that way. So whichever one of these, I'm just doing this quickly. So, okay, so that's onelook.com. I'm just going to check to see if there's questions. Nope, perfect. Okay, so then if it is a medication, oh, actually, with OneLook too, if you know it's English, just go to OneLook. But if you're not sure, try MT Dictionary and then try OneLook. So, excuse me. Okay, so drugs.com. We're going to get into drugs a little bit later in this, but also I did a 1-hour presentation just on researching drug names. So I'm just showing you this just so that it's there. But you can do the same sort of wildcard search in drugs.com to find the spelling of the name. And then if you want to check it in Quick Look Drug Book, you can copy it, go into Quick Look Drug Book, and paste it into the search box. So we're going to get into that later, but I just wanted it to be here for you to see. Okay, so I'm going to close these up. Okay, let's get back to here. Okay. So surgical tools. So some of you might not be into this yet, but I do know there's the odd surgery put into other chapters. So this does come up sooner than you might expect. So MT Dictionary, we've gone over that because the pigtail catheter, for example, was the example that I used. Now, Stedman's ebook, Stedman's medical and surgical equipment. So again, we have to get out of this, this page. Let's see here. I have it open. So basically with this, it's looking up terms for you, but you need to have the spelling again. So again, if you don't know the spelling, go to Empty Dictionary and find the spelling. But let's just use an example. Like say they said indigo something, for example. You can write in indigo, hit search, and see. So indigo, diffuse, nope, that's not really what I want. And like you're just trying to see what it follows. Indigo, diffuse fiber, optima laser. So I can see, okay, so it's capitalized if it's with a laser. I actually don't see it here for anything else, but it's a way to look up capitalization. If you can hear part of a phrase, like say, pigtail again. You're looking to see double pigtail stent. It's going to give you different terms that word is in, so hopefully you can maybe figure out the rest of the phrase that way. But you can also do something similar in here. Like if I could tell it started with pigtail, whoops, and I can't tell what else was in it, or maybe there was something before the word pigtail. I just know I heard pigtail, and I hit return instead of search. That works the same way, and there's a whole bunch of phrases with pigtail. So even if you don't have the ebook anymore, it's another way to go about it. So there was that. I know the next site that I was going to mention on there is MediLexicon. So this site for equipment, it doesn't have a lot of really specific things, but if something basic, like let's say they say rongeur, some sort of rongeur, and you just want to make sure that it actually fits, instrument for removing small pieces of bone, it will give you a couple of types of rongeur, but that's not even hitting the tip of the iceberg. So I would use this more for looking up like what the basic instrument is for, which can be helpful because it takes a while to learn what the different tools are for. So there is that. Let's see, we'll get back to the slide in a minute. I just have written down what is next. So there is, on the handout I gave you, this particular site just lists in alphabetical order a whole bunch of terms. So that's something you can try. Let me see here. Surgicaltools.com. It might sound like the obvious place to go, but this particular site is a sales site. So doctors and hospitals would go to this site to shop for tools, basically. But where it can be handy is it's organized by specialty. So if I knew I'm doing a brain surgery, I can go into neurosurgery. And then if they were doing a hypophysectomy, I can go into there, or, they're then into subsections. So, just look in here, but it can be a bit more time consuming, but sometimes I found something that I've been looking for. There is a search button at the top, but the problem is if I hit rongeur, they sell so many different kinds that it gives you a very large result, and it's very difficult. How many pages is over 641 results. So I don't find that as handy, but sometimes going in by specialty is handy. So that's something to consider. I guess I didn't put it into that. Medline Plus is a site where this is not so much to look up tools, but where this is useful for surgical reports is they have videos. So surgery videos. If you're trying to wrap your head around a certain surgery. And then some of these videos, not all, but some of them actually have the transcript from the video. So that might help you find terminology that way. But that's there if you have any interest in seeing how something is done. Over time, you'll really get used to the surgeries, and you'll just know, someone will tell you they're having an appendectomy and you don't know exactly what the steps are going to be over time. But when you're learning, there's a lot of research with surgical reports. The other one that was on there, I think it's Wheelless. This is a British site, which you can tell by the extra vowels there. So just make sure if you find any terminology from the site, again, obviously it's an orthopedic site, so it's good for a lot of terminology for anatomy. It actually has a nice list of fracture types, which I used to hear all the time. So that's kind of handy. But just make sure you double check the spelling, because we accept US and Canadian spelling, but not British spelling. So just double check that. But this site's quite handy as well. The other thing that I used to come across quite a bit when I was working was they would say some sort of a brand name, and then like say, for instance, the example I'm going to use is, let's say I'm doing a report on a hip replacement, and they said they're going to insert a Zimmer acetabular cup. They say some kind of lining you can't hear, some sort of brand name of that cup along with Zimmer, like whatever they've named that cup, and you can't quite catch what it is. So what you can do is just pretend you're a doctor shopping for parts. And so, let's see if I've got it on there. I don't. So let's just say it's the Zimmer site. Oh, I do have it here. So I know it's a Zimmer acetabular cup. So I'm going to go to the Zimmer official website. I'm going to pretend I'm a doctor. So basically, for medical professionals. So if they said Zimmer, I can go there. If they said Biomet, which is like another division, I can go there. Just going to go to the Zimmer stuff. Look at all these products that you can look up. So let's just go then, hip replacement. I'm just going to continue on with that. I used to do this all the time. So hip arthroplasty, because it's a hip replacement. There's all the names of the products they have. And oftentimes with these sites, if you get into it enough, they'll give you some of the model numbers and so on, like if you were to look that up. So that's really handy. I used to have a doctor, I can't even count how many different cataract surgeries I did, and they would say something like a Balsham Lom, intraocular lens, model number, and then a bunch of letters and numbers, and B and D, and they all sound the same. So I would go to the Balsham Lom website. I would go and look up their intraocular lenses and look at the model numbers. Go, oh, okay, they all start with B. So I would then know which one I was looking for. So that's always handy. So yeah, that's all of these sites that I've gone over here. And again, they're going to be on the handout that's going to be posted. We've gone over this. This was the one that had the surgical tools. And we've gone over this one. It's the orthopedics one. And we've gone over the brand name. I got ahead of myself there. And Zimmer. So again, any of these brand name products, they will have a website. Just go in as a doctor and check to see what the different products are and how to spell them. And just remember, anything that's a brand name, you need to capitalize it. So, I mean, I had a question the other day that was a really good one about the website for Smith & Nephew. And when you look on the website, the way the graphic designer designed things was it was Smith & Nephew, all lowercase with an asterisk between and no spaces between. That's just the way the graphic designer made their name, but when you were to write it, you would write Smith with a capital S and Nephew with a capital N, because they're brand names. They have to capitalize brand names. Okay, so specialty information. The Book of Style is so good for this, and a lot of you have heard me say I did not pay enough attention to this as a student, and I could kick myself for how much time I would have saved. So Section 4 of the Book of Style contains information specific to different specialties. It's chapters 13 to 24, and the topics range widely. They have formatting information, classification information, so things like stage 3B this, how do you write it? Is it Roman numerals? Is it Arabic numerals? Uppercase B, lowercase b? If you go on Google, you're going to find conflicting information for that kind of thing, and it drives you crazy. And you could just go to the Book of Style, find the appropriate specialty, and I'm just going to show you this. Whoops. Okay, so we got to get out of here again. Book of Style. So I'm going to go to chapter 14, cardiology, because that's what I had there. So it talks about how to write out EKG leads. It talks about how to write out pacemaker codes. Like that stuff is just so valuable. EKG leads are written so strangely, so it's really nice to have just a quick peek there. For something like classification systems, I'm going to go to orthopedics, and it's 1815. So we can get there quickly. Okay. So this for orthopedics, it's usually degeneration issues or fractures is what most of these are, but they're in alphabetical order. So for example, if they said Mayo 2A, you would know it's Roman numerals and uppercase A. So they have the most common ones here. They do not have them all, but they have quite a bit of them. And so it could save you a lot of time just coming here to look. And for any other information that is pertinent for formatting. I've had people ask, they're in the skeletal chapter and they're not sure why they wrote the vertebral levels incorrectly, like T2 to 4, for example. So if they'd gone to orthopedics, which skeletal, muscular, or orthopedics, it will tell you how to write the vertebral levels. So something you might want to do before you get to a chapter test is just find the specialty chapter that applies and just have a quick flip through. I mean, you don't need to memorize things, but just see what's there. Have a quick flip through, and then when you're doing your test, hopefully then if something cannot be found in the course material, you'll go, oh, okay, I'm going to check the Book of Style Specialty chapter. I seem to recall it was there. And when you start your reports, hopefully that light bulb will go off, like, okay, vertebral levels was in the orthopedics chapter. I remember seeing it there, and go there and look something up. So hopefully when the light bulb goes off, you'll avoid yourself a formatting error or some sort of issue. So they're very, very valuable, and learn from my mistakes and take full advantage of those. Let me see. Oh, sounded like words next. So I just want to make sure. Oh, yeah. I think that is all I had for specialty stuff. So sounded like words. So here's a couple of really common ones I see. He has a discrete mass. He has a discrete mass. Which of those is correct? He has coarse breath sounds, or she has coarse breath sounds. She has coarse breath sounds. These are the ones I see all the time, almost every day. I see these. So let's get into this a bit more. Book of Style, Appendix C. I wish there was a quicker way to go back and forth, but anyways. Okay, so the back of the Book of Style, Appendix C, there is a usage glossary, and it does list quite a few of the really common ones. So it's something you might want to just look over every once in a while. And I happen to know, if I can get far enough in here, bear with me. I know that discrete is in here. I just have to get to the right page. See, there's lots of them in here. Oh, what happened there? There it is. So discrete. Say they said discrete mass. So judicious reserve in one's speech or behavior, basically being very polite. So if you spell discrete mass that way, it means you have a very polite mass. If you spell it this way, it means separate or individually distinct. So just always double check if you're not 100% sure which one. Just look it up. So, having a look through this list in Book of Style once in a while is helpful. If it is a medical term, I would suggest going to Simmons Online and looking it up and check the differences. And then the other sites that I tend to use, there's a website I like called Free Dictionary, thefreedictionary.com. So let's look up the course one with the U. Search. So development in a particular way, movement in time. So what was the example that we had? Coarse breath sounds. So that doesn't make sense for that. So it's probably the other way. So we can just check the other spelling. Okay, so lacking in delicacy, rough. Now, mind you, this is kind of more medical related, so you can actually go to the medical dictionary tab and it will give you some more medically related. But coarse breath sounds, it just means rough sounding. So the coarse with the A is what is correct. So you can use these websites to just quickly look things up. Oxford Dictionary is another one you can do online, and you can look things up there as well, whichever one you prefer. Rough or harsh, there you go. So just, have a look in different sites, see which ones you prefer, and then I would bookmark them and then just use them to your advantage. But just make sure you're using the right spelling of a word for the context it's being used in. Okay, so abbreviations are next. So these are a list of different websites that you can go to just check meanings of abbreviations. Again, these will be on the handout. I'm just going to go through some of them because really all you're doing is typing in the abbreviation. So Stebbins obviously is going to have different ones, so you can just look it up. Starla is asking if she can ask a question about Book of Style. Please feel free. Okay, so GERD is there, and there's your definition. So that's one. Another one that I really liked, not sure if I got it there, don't. Acronymfinder.com. So I'm going to look up SIDS here, find. So what you'll see here, and sometimes a lot of definitions come up. There's only 17 here, but luckily the one that I want is right up top. But what you might notice sometimes is the one you want isn't exactly at the top, and there's a lot of them. So these are separated into categories. So I usually just go to science and medicine to narrow it down. And you can see SIDS actually has different meanings in this category, but just keep that in mind that to narrow it down, you want to go to science and medicine. Sometimes you've got local information, or they might say some sort of a support group, in which case it's not necessarily going to be under there, but you can still look up things like that on here. And then you can click on it to get the definition from there. So that's kind of nice. The Medi lexicon, I will get to your question in just a second. You can do abbreviations in here as well. So let's do SIDS here again. So again, there's a few other ones here. A lot of other ones actually. So that's a good one. So that's Medi lexicon. And we did Stebbins Online. The one thing I want to show you with Stebbins Online, there's a particular example I wanted to show you. HCT. So I've often said to students, make sure you really research your abbreviations, because do you see how the lowercase, one letter's lowercase, different forms of what's uppercase and lowercase, they all mean something different actually. So you have to not just check that your letters are correct, but check that your capitalization of them is correct. So that's something that I wanted to point out. Let me just open up my comments again. Okay, so when you go into the Book of Style in Vital Source bookshelf, I only see the front and back. Okay, so what you have to do is click on the book. Mine is similar in the website version. So when I first log in, you're just going to see the book and you would click on it. I know this is slightly different, but do you see here it says back cover and front cover? If I click on the front, it will open up all of the chapters. If you have any trouble with that, give me a call. I don't have Vital Source open right now, unfortunately. Let me just see, because if I have to sign in, I can't open it in front of you. That's my dog, Sadie, by the way. I didn't expect her to make a showing. Okay, so I can open it up, and I'm just going to click on that little arrow. Apparently there's an update for me to do. See? Just go from page to page there. Okay, so I'm just going to close that up. Okay, so yeah, there's some differences between the online version and don't be embarrassed, Starla. There's so much to learn. I was just going to say there's pros and cons to the Vital Source version and the online one. So play with both and see which ones you prefer. I find that one is nice because you can bookmark it, and I find the text a little bit bigger, which would be the online version, but I find that the Vital Source one, you can't bookmark it, but you can make your results page wider by sliding over that section, just making it wider, and then you can see more of what your preview is, and easier to see what page you're going to. So they have pros and cons. Okay, so let me just see. Okay, so we've gone through all of those. Okay, so laboratory values. Let's get into that. So one spot you can go to is Stedman's Online. I'm not going to go there now, but basically when you sign in, normally you're on the home page, but if you notice there is a reference tab at the top, and then each of these sections has all kinds of information. So for labs, you would go to reference value, laboratory reference range values is there. Going back to abbreviations, there is actually under the abbreviations page a list of common medical abbreviations. So these are really good to just have a look through to see what's there. But yeah, Stedman's Online is one. Okay, so let's use an example here. The dictator said the patient's potassium is normal at 6.3. That doesn't sound right. So what can you do? So one site that's quite good is Lab Tests Online. So let's go there. Sorry. Okay, so there's a lot of good stuff on here. It goes into different conditions. It will give you definitions of those, different tests and so on. But I just want to quickly find out what is the normal value for potassium. So I'm going to put that in there. Sometimes you have to click on it again to get what you want. Okay, so reference range. The normal is 3.5 to 5.1. So if they said that it's normal at 6.3, there's something wrong there. So you would need to flag that because that's actually hyperkalemia. It's a condition. If they didn't mention anything to do with that and they're saying the potassium is normal at 6.3, there is a discrepancy there, so you would need to flag that. So that's a really good use for that. And sometimes you can't tell the difference between numbers. I get into that with the drugs, but 15 and 50 sound a lot alike, so this is helpful for that kind of thing. Okay, medications and dosages. I'm just going to touch on this. There is a 1-hour webinar that I did in 2017. Here's the link for it, and it's very thorough, and it goes through all the different types of strategies of how to find a medication name or a dose or so on. What can you do if you don't even hear enough of the name to actually do a wildcard search? I go through all of that stuff. All of the stuff I learned the hard way is in that webinar, so I'm not going to go into drugs too much here, but Quick Look Drug Book and drugs.com would be the two main ones. I know drugs.com is easier to use than Quick Look, but just remember for tests and for exams, Quick Look Drug Book trumps drugs.com. So just double check things in Quick Look. Someone is asking how to see that webinar. The PDF of this will be posted later, and you can just copy and paste this website. This website is also going to be posted in the handout. And you should have a username and password that was emailed to you from Student Services. If you have trouble getting into the student forum, just ask Student Services and they'll help you out. So let's just go. I'm just going to do this. Is anyone bothered if this is just what the slide looks like? I hope not. It's just easier to go back and forth. Okay, Stephanie's telling me it was helpful. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so drugs.com, remember that you can do the wildcard searches. So let's just say, for example, not just even the drug name, but let's say you can't tell if they said 15 or 50. So I'm going to say for this drug that I could tell started with an F, and then there was a pair sound or par sound, and then I could tell there was an N, and then there was an X. See how it's giving you examples in the drop-down menu? So there it is. If we're going to use drugs.com for it, you want the one with the star. And once I get to the page, I can tell that's a generic, so I know not to capitalize it. If I go to dosage, okay. it comes in 7.5 milligrams, 15 or 50. There's nothing here. Well, I guess they could give you 5 times 10 milligrams, but that seems like a rather high dose. So it's likely that it's going to be 2 7.5 milligram pills to make 15. So that's an example of how you can use it. If it's something that you're taking, you're interested, that tells you side effects, all kinds of information here. The other thing you can do is copy that spelling, Control C, pop it into Quick Look Drug Book. I want to show you Quick Look Drug Book very quickly. Again, it's in the other webinar and we're short for time here. But basically, what I want you to notice, okay, I've looked up aspirin. Quickest way to know which of these pages is to go to is I had a student show me this, so thank you to that student. Usually just go to the very end and go to the index. This is very hard to see, but aspirin, page 100. Okay, that's the page I want. If I hit 100 up here, it'll take me to the right page, but the word aspirin won't be highlighted on the page anymore, and I want it to be so I can show you something. So I'm just going to find 100. There's the page I want. Okay. So Quick Look is organized in alphabetical order of generic drug names. You can only tell which one you're on because it's in slightly bigger font and it is bolded and all lowercase. So aspirin is a generic because it is the heading here basically. What I want you to see, I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so what I've had is students have called me and said, well, it's capitalized in Quick Look. So basically, if you look here under the brand names, yeah, that's capitalized. But if I look more carefully, Bayer Aspirin Extra Strength, that's the brand name, not aspirin on its own. St. Joseph Adult Aspirin, that's the brand name. When you look at the full name, that's the brand names. People are not very creative when they come up with their brand names. So basically, I've looked up aspirin. Someone said they've lost me. I'm not sure. Control F will allow you to find words. Sure, I'll get to that in just a minute as well. But basically here, I've searched aspirin. Here's the generic, and then all the information about that generic. It is capitalized under the brand names, but when I look carefully, aspirin on its own is not a brand name, but Bayer Aspirin Regimen Children's is the brand name. So look carefully at that. If you see that that word that you looked up is capitalized up top here, it might not always be the top of the page too. It just depends on the page. But like if we go to the next page, I want to get a different drug altogether. Let's just randomly pick a page. Okay, so budesonide is your generic. And we go into brand names, Entocort, Pulmicort. These are the brand names of budesonide. So you can always tell what your generic is because it's basically your heading, but it's all lowercase, slightly bigger font, and it's bolded. So just keep that in mind, but just remember, Quick Look trumps drugs.com. So again, drugs.com is great. You can find the spelling. You can put it, I'm just going to just do random letters. I have no idea what I'm looking up here, but they have suggestions that come up. So that's great. I'm just going to pick one of these. I have no idea what this does. It's a beta blocker. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to come in here, and this is the brand name of propranolol. So because it's a brand name, it would be capitalized in your report. Okay, so that's all I'm going to get into because it's really covered very thoroughly in the other doctors and nurses' names. This is not going to come up for you in the course, but boy, oh boy, is it ever going to come up for you after you graduate. So I wanted to cover this because I wish I'd had this before. So what can I do if a dictator gives a doctor's name or a nurse's name and I'm not sure how to spell it? Oh, Lisa's saying you can listen to the audio recording. Like they'll say the drug name for drugs.com. For some of them, not all of them. Let's just see if lisinopril, I think it's a pretty common one. There. So I don't know if you could hear that, but they will say it out loud and just know it might be slightly different if someone's got an accent, but that's helpful too. Just going to get back to this because I know we're pressed for time and we might be coming just under the wire here. So I used to hear them say doctors' names all the time, nurses' names, please send a CC to so-and-so, or they might just say they're seeing the respiratory therapist, Dr. So-and-so. How do you spell it? I mean, a lot of these names are not Smith or brown. So it's not always that easy. So this is how you can go about it. So basically the provinces and territories, I had a hard time finding Yukon territory. I actually was checking that. That was a bit of a toughie, but most provinces and territories have a website for what is called the College of Physicians and Surgeons. It will be specific to the province. These sites provide a search function to help you obtain a physician name, where their practice is, and so on. So you can get addresses, how to spell their name, and so on. So I'm going to show you this because I pretty much did this every single day of my career. So I'm going to go to the Ontario one first because I live in Ontario. This is the one I'm most familiar with because most of my accounts were in Ontario. You want to go either find a doctor here or find a doctor. Okay, so go to the advanced search. If they tell you the city where that doctor is, pop it in there. Sometimes with the CCs, they'll give you postal code, so you can enter that in if you want. Any information you've got, I'm going to add additional search options as well. So let's just say the last name. We could tell it started with a P. Now this site, you have to use asterisk or percentage signs. I heard an M, and then I heard a D, and then I heard an N. I don't know what their first name is. I know that they are in Ottawa. They mentioned that they were in Ottawa. There it is. And I know that they're an anesthesiologist. So if we come down here, they're a specialist. So we click on specialist, select a specialization, anesthesiology. So let's see what we get. Submit. Bingo. So Dr. I'm not even sure how to say that. Plamondon, I'm going to guess. At Ottawa Hospital. There's their address. There's their specialization. And if you really want, you can go in and find out more information about them. It's just kind of interesting sometimes. But anyways, so that's the one for Ontario. Oops, I think I hit the wrong. There's one for BC because I have one of my accounts was in BC. It's not quite as thorough as that one, but again, advanced search. And you put in whatever information you can put in. If you missed the last minutes, Alicia, just because we're short on time, just watch the video. It'll be posted later today. Okay, sorry about that. So basically, you're going to put in whatever you can, hit search, and then weed it out. And there should be one for all the provinces, Starla. Like I said, I looked up Yukon, and I could not find something that was helpful. It was sort of more if you were a patient looking for a doctor. I couldn't find something like this, but most of the provinces do have one. Nurses, they should have one too. And in fact, as I'm going to get into in a slide later, any registered health professional will be they have to be licensed. I'm a retired registered massage therapist. I was licensed through the College of Massage Therapy of Ontario. You can still go on there and find me on there. It'll say I'm retired and so on, but that there was never any hearing against me or anything like that. There's all kinds of information on these things. So, you know, if it's for trying to find a nurse's name, search for a nurse. So, okay, here it's going to make me pretend to say I'm not a robot in front of you all. This is kind of a... Okay, so search by name, because they're not going to give you the registration number and so on. So I don't know the first name, but let's just say the last name. I could just tell it started with the arm. It sounded like arm something. And I could tell that they, or I knew that they worked in Guelph, for example. So... city was Guelph, which is a town. It's a city in Ontario. Let's just see what I get. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you still don't know and you have to leave a blank, and that's fine. It is much easier, much safer to leave a blank, but sometimes you can really tell. So we've got a bunch here that start with arm that all are in Guelph. If they've given you a facility, awesome. That will help you narrow it right down. But, you know, usually once you get looking at the names, you can narrow it down. Like, well, I know it wasn't Armstrong. It sounded like Armborst, so that must have been the name. It's at the correct place. There's more information about them, like practice information, their registration history. You don't really need to know that, but it's there. And it's the same thing with all registered health professionals. So here's the one on nurses. There's the BC one, Saskatchewan. So all you need to do is basically Google the province name and then plus nurses registration or college of physicians, like whatever it is, registered massage therapists, whatever it is. So like I've said here, all registered or licensed health professionals belong to a governing body of some sort. It's normally called the college. Don't mistake that for the school. It's just like the college is the governing body for that particular profession. So chiropractors, registered massage therapists, physiotherapists, osteopaths, naturopathic doctors, dentists, like you name it, if it's registered, then they have to be online with the governing body, and you can usually search for them. I've had to do some looking for social workers. That's not so easy, but I have found the odd one. So yeah, all of these can be looked for online. Now, registered massage therapists, having said that, having been one, not every single province forces them to be registered. So if you're in a province that hasn't done that yet, you're not going to have the same luck with something like that. It's only for the provinces that have make them be licensed. And that will be any province that deems that that type of practitioner could do harm to a patient by some sort of malpractice. They are usually the ones that are registered. Okay, what if I don't know how to spell a first name mentioned in a report, such as the name as a patient's relative or friend? This used to happen to me all the time. Oh, Dixie's saying social workers aren't required to be registered in Alberta. That is fascinating. So you won't find one online likely that way. Okay, so let's say they said someone's first name and you don't know how to spell it. So this is a little trick that I learned, and try not to laugh at me, but I go to places where parents look for baby names, and babynames.com was my favorite one. So this works really well if you don't know how to spell a name. So basically with this site, if it will load for me, close some of the other ones up. Oh no, please load. Okay, here we go. Okay, so you can go to search names. And again, if you don't know how to spell that name and you've heard parts of it, then just put in what you heard. I'm just gonna, I could tell it started with a G and ends, I don't know, I'm just gonna put in an N. Let's just say I heard an R in there and we know it's a male. I don't even know if something's gonna come up. I'm just making this up. There's some names, there you go. So then you can see the spelling. If there's multiple spellings, you're not sure, blank it. But sometimes, like, this has helped me more times than I can count. And it seems like a really silly way to go about it, but I will use whatever tool I can to get those blanks filled in. So, and you're going to hear stuff like that. Now, if you have access to former reports for that patient, and this is someone who's coming in with them frequently, like a husband, a wife, a parent, then it might be in a past report. So you can always look, and you're going to trust that someone else has spelled it right. But this is the site I went to more often than I might like to admit. So yeah, thinking outside the box, that's right. So yeah, okay. So then the last bit I wanted to go over was local information. So again, these are things that are all blanked out in your reports but one day you're going to have to fill them in. So what if I'm unsure how to transcribe names of support groups, senior residences, businesses, or other local or regional information? So you need to think about where your hospital is located. So usually you can find these things online, but I suggest you perform a search including the name of the city where the patient lives, because you're going to have that information usually, or you're at least going to know where the hospital is, so they're going to live near the hospital unless it mentions they're visiting from somewhere else. I have been to the hospital in Calgary 3 times in my life. I don't live in Alberta. It just so happens every time I go to Alberta, I hurt myself. So take note of local names such as a senior's residence, name of a local police force, as you will hear those names over and over. So what you might want to do is create an Excel spreadsheet, a Word spreadsheet, something, because you're going to hear them say the patient was discharged to such and such the senior's home, and you're going to need to know how to spell that. And things like Garden View or Southbrook, one word or two, like, those kinds of things are important. So I would create a document of some sort and keep track of them. And over time, your research time will be cut down. Do you have recommendations on how to create these cheat sheets for ourselves? There's not a webinar. Basically, I would just either be writing them in Word and maybe have it organized, like one page is seniors homes, one page is whatever, support groups, or just do it in Excel and just have it so that you can alphabetize it. So you might have one sheet is your seniors homes, one sheet's your support groups, whatever. And then let's just say one is Garden View, and we'll just say it's one word, and another one is Southbrook, and another one is, I'm gonna make up something silly, Cranberry Homes. I don't know where that came from, but anyways. Okay, so then you've got them in there, and you can just highlight them all or highlight that particular thing, but I'm gonna do it the way I like. Highlight it, sort A to Z, and now it's in alphabetical order. Then again, that Control F function we talked about later, I want to do a Control F, and I'm pretty sure they said south something, so it'll take you to the box that has south in it. So that's handy. But I'm going to show you a couple of search examples. So I like Bing.com. I just always found it. Google used to be really slow for me back in the day, so I got familiar with Bing.com. You can use Google, whatever you want. And I'm going to use a city. A lot of my accounts used to be in the Toronto area because I live in Ontario. I don't live in Toronto, but I had a lot of hospitals in that area. So I'm going to use a little, a city is not little, outside of Toronto called Brampton. So let's just say they were talking about the police force, and they were saying the Peel Police Force. How do you spell Peel? So I would then go in here and go Brampton plus police force. Peel Regional Police. P-E-E-L. Done. Take note of it. Know that Brampton is in the Peel region. So, you know, the communities that you live in or the townships, Peel region. So that's for Brampton. Let's just say, again, the seniors residences. You can look up something like Brampton plus senior homes or something, anything along those lines. Place for mom, don't go there. It's to find a place to place your parent, and it's not going to help you find the different names. It's a little weird. I looked at it earlier, not handy. But you kind of want to have a look through. Here's some here. You can also do Yellow Pages. Whoops, helps if you spell it properly. Okay, so I don't know why it's giving me that city, but okay. So Brampton, and then senior care and services, housing, I mean, all kinds of stuff in here. So you can look it up. You can organize this to come by relevance or alphabetical, which I would prefer, and then go through and find, see if you can find what you want. Take note of it for later, but I'm telling you, there's going to be more support groups. I hate to say the term, but halfway houses, I heard that term all the time. You'd have to look up the name of those houses. Shelters for homelessness, different businesses. I actually had to put Walmart and Tim Hortons into my spell check because there are more fights and heart attacks in Walmarts and McDonald's than I can count. So those are all things that you'll just get used to what is local for that city. Keep a list of things, and then over time you won't have to look them up as much because you'll hear them often, but in case you do, go to your list first and then try this. So those are all things to keep in mind. Let's see. So, hey, we made it through. Thank you for coming. So we just have a couple of minutes if there's any pressing questions that I've missed. I'm going to just go. But yeah, that's everything. So again, I'm going to post this on the school site, and there are 2 pages of websites for you to look at, most of which we've covered, some of which we haven't. So that's all coming to you very soon. So thank you everybody for coming today.